This is Tendai, a tenacious, zestful businessman and recipient of the Astute Leadership of the Year award. Tendai and his team know that prized information flowing through their network must be protected 24/7 from the highly adaptive and pervasive cyber threats of our time.
Ransomware, malware viruses. We can't afford the crippling downtime caused by these data breaches. Besides, the only fishing I enjoy is scheduled this weekend in celebration of our latest milestone. That's why we have secured our network through Dandem Tande with the world's best endpoint protection, Sophos Central Intercept X Advanced 6R. Whether in the office or working remotely, Sophos 6R works in the background to effectively eliminate all manner of cyber threats and safeguard the integrity of our data, allowing us to concentrate on what matters, like growing our.
This is Tendai, a tenacious, zestful businessman and recipient of the Astute Leadership of the Year award. Tendai and his team know that prized information flowing through their network must be protected 24/7 from the highly adaptive and pervasive cyber threats of our time.
Ransomware, malware viruses. We can't afford the crippling downtime caused by these data breaches. Besides, the only fishing I enjoy is scheduled this weekend in celebration of our latest milestone. That's why we have secured our network through Dandem Tande with the world's best endpoint protection, Sophos Central Intercept X Advanced 6R. Whether in the office or working remotely, Sophos 6R works in the background to effectively eliminate all manner of cyber threats and safeguard the integrity of our data, allowing us to concentrate on what matters, like growing our business and bringing real value to our customers.
You too can secure your network today through Dandem Tande with Sophos 6R. Simply ask for it by name. Dandem Tande, your reliable ICT solutions partner. This is Tendai.
Great. Good afternoon to you all from wherever you're joining us in the world, and welcome to our cybersecurity discussion brought to you by Dandem Tande, your reliable ICT solutions provider, in collaboration with the Institute of Cybersecurity of Zimbabwe. For the next hour, we will focus on the human factor as it pertains to cybersecurity and how to develop a robust cybersecurity culture within our organizations. Over the course of the discussion, please drop your comments and questions on the group chat, and there will be a Q&A session towards the end of the hour. My name is Tinashe Munzara, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon as we navigate the impact of insider threats and the threats that they pose to our organizations. Human factors are used by cyber criminals to either gain unauthorized access, steal credentials, or infect our systems and endpoints with malware. It's probably widely accepted that without the human in the machine effect, cybercrime would not be a problem as it is now. With me is an impressive panel of professionals with combined 30 years of experience in the cyber industry. And I'll just introduce them, or would you guys prefer to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Ladies first.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. My name is Rufaro Mandu. I'm the managing partner of Aramandu Attorneys. I've been in the industry for quite some time now, and I've been in the cyberspace since 2018, and I'm interested in data privacy rights issues.
Great stuff.
Awesome. I'm Samakumba Brian. I'm the ICT solutions. I'm the ICT security products manager with Dandem Tande, and I've been in the industry for over 16 years now, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm Kuza Isesengwe. I'm the managing consultant for Cyber Genius. We are a governance, risk, and compliance consulting firm. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. I think let's jump straight into it. Brian, cybersecurity culture. Why is it important?
I think first and foremost, it will be prudent for us to demystify what a cybersecurity culture is, basically, before I dive into your question.
Sure.
And basically, we're looking at the attitude, the knowledge, the assumptions, the norms and values of a workforce of an organization with respect to cybersecurity. That should sum up what cybersecurity culture is. It's basically how the employees of an organization perceive cybersecurity and how to mitigate it.
Fantastic. So if we bring it back to Zimbabwe, right, what is the general culture within Zimbabwe? How aware are we of what we're doing in the cyberspace?
I think my colleagues would concur with me that it's still a journey. We just started it. It's not as old as it has been in the first world countries. We've seen threats coming in, but at a very slow pace. But then most of it is unexpected, as its nature. And yeah, it's still the beginning of the journey.
So then how does a robust or more aware cyber culture contribute to the robustness of our cybersecurity initiatives?
A culture, basically, why we build that particular culture is then to conscientize our employees and all the network users as to what the damages, the threats can be on our networks.
Sure. So maybe moving on to you, Rufaro. So the human factor, what are we saying there? What's the human factor in cybersecurity, and what's its real impact on cybersecurity for a business?
All right. When we talk about the human factor, we are talking about what is usually termed the insider threat. And this is, as it denotes, it's about human interaction, human behavior, and human failures. It's all intertwined. And we're looking at employees and non-employees. And when we're talking about non-employees, we're talking about our consultants and people we interact with, especially if we're processors, data processors, and data controllers. So the human factor has got a huge impact on cybersecurity because our interactions on cyberspace and how we react affects the organization, especially as employees. You'll find that that is where credential issues come into play, credential stealing, some steal credentials from each other. And you'll find that your employees are your biggest threat. That's why it's called insider threat, because they expose you to cyber attacks, they expose you to the different elements of cyber crimes on the cyberspace. And you'll find that the importance of cyber culture, cybersecurity culture, is to circumvent all of that human factor and human failure, because you'll find that when someone responds to a phishing email, then it exposes you to malware and different types of cybersecurity threats. And so that is the whole issue as to the impact of the human factor.
Great stuff. Thank you for mentioning phishing. I'm assuming there will be some non-technical members in our audience. Maybe could you walk through maybe those, we started off with phishing, but what are the activities that then lead to us being compromised?
Okay, thank you so much. So maybe I will start by defining what phishing is for the benefit of those who are non-technical. Phishing is when you receive an email that looks legitimate in most cases, and then a user then clicks on that email, and then it leads to some breaches. So that's phishing. So there are several methods in which the human factor can contribute to the rise of the cybersecurity framework, cybersecurity structure within an organization. One of them, and the most common one, being phishing, whereby you are clicking on something that is pretending to be true, but it's actually not true, and then it leads to a breach. Then there are several other ways in which the human factor can also be affected. Social engineering, where somebody may not necessarily then send in a click, they can call, which is very common. We would understand, especially in our Zimbabwean culture, where somebody calls and says, "What's the name of your branch manager, by the way?" You give them the number. "Oh, yes. I forgot their name. What's their number, by the way?" And we end up divulging information. So it's part of the information that is being sent out by employees, not knowing that they are breaching the security parameters of the organization.
Great stuff. And in your experience, what's the best practice to try and mitigate? How do we mitigate all these potential lines of vulnerability?
Okay, so I think first things first is most people don't understand cybersecurity. Most people don't even know where it starts and where it ends. So like the Shona adage goes, what we need to do is to start by letting people know what it is, what threats lie in their actions. And then from there, we develop a framework. We also ensure that the people know their framework. So for the first thing for me is user awareness and training. After we have created a robust security system, after we have created a culture, we make people aware of how they play their parts in ensuring that that culture is a success.
Great stuff, great stuff. Anything else, Brian? How do we enhance our cyber awareness and just generally improve the culture within the business in your experience in deploying, numerous solutions for our clients?
So I think in as much as Kudzi has come through with pretty much all the definitions, I think I second him when he says awareness. So in as much as we can put up a high infrastructure network, at the end of the day, it's being run by human beings. And if those human beings are not trained accordingly, then that piece of equipment is pretty much useless.
So what would you think is the challenge for businesses in trying to foster that culture? What is the biggest challenge? The big three top challenges, I guess, they encounter.
I think the first one, first and foremost, is ignorance, the user ignorance. If you're an ignorant user, in as much as you can be trained, as long as you are set not to want to understand or come to the fold, then you're always going to be caught wanting on the network.
True.
The other one is, for me, and the one I've seen being very prolific across, is the tone at the top. So within organizations, as long as we do not have the top executives, senior management buying into cybersecurity, they call them BBT, born before technology. They're our leaders. At times they do not appreciate the threats that are prevalent now, that probably were not prevalent 30 years ago when they took reins of those organizations, and they do not appreciate now what we are trying to achieve by a cybersecurity culture. So as long as we have no direct buy-in from top management, from senior executives, then we are never going to be able to implement a culture fully. It's like as long as a father in the house does not really appreciate something, no matter how much the children want to try it, it's never going to be really fulfilled.
Like you rightfully said earlier, and that's shown a term that also says, so as long as their head is rotten, then the rest of the body will be rotten. So like he's rightfully saying, a buy-in from the executive will have us train everyone else accordingly.
Right.
And from my experience as well, from the employees themselves, some of them, they are reluctant to learn about all of the solutions, especially the non-tech personnel.
Yeah.
They will tell you, how do I read this? How do I understand this? I'm not a coder. How am I supposed to understand this ICT policy? So I think it goes both ways.
It does. It does.
Maybe just to add on to what Rupara has just mentioned, I think pretty much in most organizations, when we've been trying to implement information security programs, one of the things that is very, very important is to make sure that people understand that information security is not an ICT baby, that everybody then plays a role, no matter their role in the organization, in ensuring that we have a robust information security culture. So it's ensuring that everybody knows their small part, ensuring that at the end of the day, we have a robust system.
Fantastic. So I'm a company. I'm aware that I need to do something, but where do I start? Is there a framework or grouping of frameworks I can try and apply in order to become more resilient and compliant?
Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, definitely there are frameworks, because this is something that has been dealt with at a global stage. Yeah, so there are leading standards that are available that we can implement within our organizations to be able to have a solid framework, a solid cybersecurity culture. But then the thing about standards is they are a guide. We then come through and optimize them so that they work to what we want within the organization. So no two organizations are the same.
Yes.
So maybe if I can add on to that, if we're looking at organizational strategy, if we look at the COVID framework, which is management driven or management oriented, it then puts in place the top management that we've just been talking about to be in compliance and also in line with what the company is planning. And if we go down to the ITIL framework, which then serves the network users to make sure that the network users are compliant. After that, we go on to the ISO 27701, which then stipulates, which is then security oriented, where we then implementing what we have planned from the strategic point of an organization. Then with those frameworks put in place, we should get a robust city's cybersecurity solution.
Great. So I've done that. I'm there. I'm at that point. I've picked a particular framework, COVID, ITL, a combination of the two. How do I measure my success as a business? How do I know? I know you can never get to a point where I've arrived because it's a constantly moving target. But how do I measure success?
So like any strategy, allow me to come in there. Like any strategy, it has to be reviewed as we go. Okay. In as much as we want to do it in-house, which is always also prudent to have a consultant come in and have a different perspective, who has a different perspective of the organization, and have a look at it from outside whilst implementing the framework state that you've chosen. And by so doing, we should then have headways as to what framework we put in place.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that Brian said. So to add on to what he has mentioned is we are assessing the framework and its implementation, but then we also need to then assess the effectiveness within the users in the organization. So one of the things is we have tools on the market where we can actually then say, for example, we've mentioned phishing. So phishing is measured probably by click rates to say the standard is at 3%. Any organization should have 3% or less of click rate. So when we started, we probably were at 45%.
Yeah.
How far have we gone 6 months down the line? Is it working, or our users don't know yet what they're supposed to be doing? So it's about having systems, having tools that are continually monitoring, that are continually educating. And because our tools are collecting data, at the end of the day, we have qualitative data, which we can look at and say, you know what, we were here and now we are here. So instead of making progress, so we're doing 2 steps. Great.
To just add on, for me, whenever I hear a question like that, I think of penetration tests. Not being a tech person, but from the knowledge that I've acquired over the years, I've learned about that and the importance of that, and the importance of reviewing policies. Because I come from a compliance and policy perspective, where you're looking at your policies. Are your in-house policies in place? Are they compliant with the laws of the land? Because it's a 2-tier situation. It's a 2-tier approach where the first tier is the legislative or the statutory compliance to say, okay, in terms of the laws of Zimbabwe, are you compliant? Are you compliant with the Cyber and Data Protection Act? Are you compliant with the Freedom of Information Act? Are you compliant with the different legislations? So when you're reviewing your processes, you have to have that in mind, and also have your policies in place, your ICT policies, your cybersecurity policies. And from that perspective, it's also in-house orientated.
So still on that one around statutory requirements and regulatory requirements, what are the impacts to a business where there is a breach? And we can trace it to it's an employee who's facilitated the breach. Is within the Zimbabwean framework, is there an implication, legal or otherwise?
Yes, there is a legal implication. It becomes an issue of a criminal aspect to it. So it brings with it the criminal aspect where you can report that particular employee. You have to look at the codification part, which was amended by the Cyber and Data Protection Act, whether it is hacking or whether it is unauthorized access, and you can make a police report. And then you can also sue them in the civil courts. But usually if it's an employee, what are your chances of getting any recourse from them? The best way would be to come up with a disciplinary action where you reprimand or you come up with a solution in-house as to what to do with that employee, whether to dismiss them or to just give them a penalty or a punitive sentence to say, this is what is not supposed to be done in the future, don't do this, which will be just a caution and a discharge. And then there's also the issue that you have to report within 24 hours of this breach, because in terms of the Cyber and Data Protection Act, you are required in terms of this, it's section 19, which actually requires you to make that report within 24 hours to the Data Protection Authority, which is Fortress.
Great. And then as a business, is there reputational risk as well? I'd like to assume if the breach results in, transactions occurring with a third party, am I liable, or is it the individual who's liable?
From an organizational perspective, it touches on your reputation, like what you rightfully pointed out. We remember the famous Liberty case. A lot of people were now wincing each time they hear Liberty in assurance, because of that breach that happened. And it was only reported by the hacker themselves, and it caused a lot of commotion. So yes, it affects your image. Unfortunately, in terms of our laws, you cannot exactly take the organization itself, to the courts and say, this is what has happened. There is no punitive aspect in terms of our laws. So it is that particular individual who has to be penalized, but not the organization itself in terms of our laws. Unless if you want to come up with a with a civil action we can use as an example. Which brings me to issues of KYC. Sorry to go ahead of you.
Please.
But I just thought about an action that was done by one of us, a lawyer, where they were suing a bank, FBC, for KYC protocol failure. And you find that it touches on your, even though the case was not won, but at the back of our minds, we are still wondering, okay, are they now compliant? We actually, it would be nice for us for them to give us a report to say, no, insofar as our KYC protocols, we are now compliant. I'm not saying that whatever happened is wrong, because I cannot be a judge of